and welcome back to the channel. We have another Grim Histories video. If this is your first time here, my name is Megan and you can normally find me on my other channel, True Crime Mysteries. But over here we like to play around with other content. I really liked doing the historical video last week and you guys seem to like it too. I've always really loved history and I'm looking forward to making more videos like this. If you like this content, please hit the like button and subscribe if you want to see more. But with that being said, let's get into it. Half an hour from the city center of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, in amongst the suburban homes, there are crumbling stone and wrought iron fencing that hint to a presence of gilded history. Pieces of stunning craftsmanship withstanding the test of time. Though it may not look like it now, the area of Elkins Park was once home to Philadelphia's elite. Sprawling estates made up the area, showcasing the finest craftsmanship and eclectic tastes. Many of these estates are shadows of their former glory. One such estate is the magnificent Lynnwood Hall. In the early 1800s, Philly was nestled between the Schuylkill River and the Delaware River and only consisted of 2 square miles of developed land. After the American Civil War, many lost their land and wealth, but some made several advantageous business deals and came out with impressive wealth, ushering in a new post-war era. The Gilded Age was between 1870 and 1900, and it was an era of rapid economic growth. Prominent businessmen like Carnegie, Rockefeller, Morgan, and Vanderbilt became wildly wealthy and were referred to as new money. Mining, oil, factories, and railroads were some of the most advantageous industries, and businessmen were able to accumulate more money than many European royals. It was called the Gilded Age because under the gold exterior of the materialistic excesses, there was extreme poverty that all that wealth had been built upon. It could also be a dig from long-standing high class that felt that these new money businessmen, who were wealthy now, would never be considered high class because of their garish and tactlessness. Lynwood Hall was one of the largest in the area. This 70,000 square foot mansion was built in the neoclassical style between 1897 and 1900 by prominent American architect Horace Trombauer. He had been hired by Peter A.B. Weidner, a relatively new money businessman who wanted a new mansion built following the death of his beloved wife, Hannah. Hannah Weidner, who had died at the age of 60 while the family had been vacationing in Maine on their yacht. After her death, Peter didn't want to live in the home that he had built for his wife, and he donated the ornate townhouse in his wife's name to the Free Library of Philadelphia. He wanted something built that would carry on his legacy. But first, let's go back and learn a little bit more about Peter Weidner. Peter Arnell Brown Weidner was born on November 13, 1834, in Philadelphia. Born to German immigrant parents, his father Johannes was a brickmaker and a butcher. Peter and his brother would learn the butcher trade and become very well known. Though Peter never completed high school, he was very business savvy, and during the American Civil War, he won a contract to supply mutton to all the Union Army troops within 10 miles of Philadelphia. This was a massive contract, and he made about $50,000, which would translate to about $2 million today in profits from the deal. It would be one of many favorable business decisions for Peter. In 1858, he married Hannah Josephine Dunton, and they had 3 sons together, Harry, who died in his teens, George, and Joseph. He decided to take his $50,000 of profit and invest it in a chain of butcher shops. His butcher shops were very successful and would make him even more money. In the 1870s, he decided to branch out into street railways, or streetcars, as we call them today. They were horse-drawn commuter cars that would hold between 10 and 20 people. Philadelphia was rapidly expanding, with thousands of residential homes being built every year to accommodate the booming population growth. The streetcars were a rapidly expanding necessity for those who needed to commute, as cars would not be available to the masses in the U.S. for several more decades. In 1871, he got involved in city politics and became the city treasurer. He started to become increasingly involved with business politics, and through his work with street railways, he met William L. Elkins. Elkins had owned several grain grocers during the Civil War and had managed to come out of the war having amassed some wealth, and like Weidner, he also owned several street railways. The two became close friends, working together on several business projects and worked together to generate an empire of wealth. They became known as Attraction Twins, and they eventually consolidated their street railway lines into one massive company, which was not only incredibly successful, but it basically owned the entire street railway market in not only Philly, but Chicago and several other cities. The two were major players, and Elkins and Weidner worked very well together. Not only were they good friends in business, they would also have impressive estates built across the street from each other. They decided to move from the city center to the suburbs, in an area that was known at the time as Ashbourne, though it is now called Elkins Park after William. William would have Elstow Manor built in 1898 on his 42-acre property, and Peter had Lynnwood Hall on the staggering 480-acre property. Lynnwood Hall would consist of 110 rooms, 55 bedrooms, and a ballroom that could accommodate 1,000 people, an indoor pool, squash courts, vast gardens, and even a racetrack. Over 90 people were hired to run the estate, 37 for the inside and 60 for the exterior. The estate was so large it had its own electricity plant and water reservoir on the estate to ensure Lynnewood would never go without. It had been built out of Indiana limestone and was called the American Versailles. The entranceway had 2 sets of doors that were meant to draw a gasp from anyone entering. The first was an ornate set of bronze-covered doors, and the second were plated in gold. Inside, walls were paneled with walnut and decorated with gold leaf etchings. He hired famed interior designer William Baumgarten and, excuse my pronunciation on this, French firm Jules Aard Afils, and no expense was spared. At its peak, Lynnwood Hall was estimated to have been worth $25 billion. Peter Weidner was also an avid art collector. Lynnwood Hall was filled to the brim with numerous priceless works of art. Paintings from Rembrandt, Vermeer, Turner, Renoir, Degas. The paintings weren't the only art Peter loved. He also had several sculptures, figurines, tapestry, and the largest collection of Chinese porcelain in America. Peter's son Joseph also had an eye for art and helped Peter to amass one of the greatest private art collections of all time, with over 2,000 pieces. Peter Weidner would become friends and business partners with J.P. Morgan, and the two would work closely in the steel industry. Weidner also became a founding investor of the tobacco industry, which helped to make Peter Weidner the richest man in Philadelphia. In 1912, Peter Weidner decided to become a 20% stakeholder in the International Mercantile Marine Company, which was the company famed for building the RMS unsinkable Titanic. By 1912, Peter was nearly in his 80s and declined the offer to ride on the Titanic's maiden voyage. He instead sent his son George and grandson Harry. His son George was not only the heir of Lynnewood, but also had followed his father in business and had been set to take over when Peter stepped down. George and his wife Eleanor and Harry had gone on a European holiday and had planned to take the maiden voyage to return home. George held several lavish parties in his father's name while on the ship. However, on April 14th, 4 days into the voyage, the Titanic infamously hit an iceberg in the North Atlantic Ocean. George and Harry were among the 1,600 people to perish in the maritime disaster. Eleanor, however, survived, as she had been able to secure a seat on one of the first lifeboats. Peter was said to be devastated by the loss of his son and grandson. He and Eleanor donated to several charities following their deaths, but neither truly recovered from the loss. Peter Weidner died in Lynnwood Hall in 1915 at 80 years old. His son Joseph inherited Lynnewood, but didn't have the same business sense that his father and older brother had. He had passions in art and horse breeding, but not in managing vast estates. He turned Lynnwood Hall into an art gallery of sorts. Guests hoping to glimpse the vast art collection could book an appointment and attend a private showing. As Joseph got older, however, he started to donate several pieces of art to the Philadelphia Museum of Art as well as the National Gallery of Art. When he died in 1943, he had intended for his children to carry on in the care of Lynnewood, but neither wanted the financial burden that Lynnwood Hall had become. It was left abandoned for several years and quickly fell into a state of disrepair. It was sold in 1948 to a developer for $130,000. After it was sold, Lynnwood Hall's estate would begin to be parceled off to make room for more development in the area. It was sold again in 1952 to the Faith Theology Seminary, and they sold off much of Lynnewood's valuable assets as well as 350 acres of land. Now Lynnwood Hall sits on 33 acres, still an impressive amount, but nowhere near its former estate. Many of the ornate fixtures, such as mantels, walnut paneling, and landscape ornaments, were sold off, and it was last purchased in 1996 by Richard Yoon, a urologist and pastor that had attended the seminary school that had operated on the property in the 1990s. He now operates the First Korean Church on the property. Lynnwood Hall's first and second floors are in remarkably good shape for their age. The third floor has sustained extensive water damage. Yoon does maintain the property, and there is a caretaker that lives with his family on the property in one of the buildings off of the main house. Yoon is also hoping to sell the property, and he hopes that someone will restore it to its former glory, but he can't afford the $50 million estimate it would take to restore it. Over the years, he has made several attempts to offload the property, listing it between $16 and $11 million. Lynnwood Hall is still a beautiful property, though it continues to face trouble. Vandalism and theft are ongoing issues. At this time, there are no plans for the property, and though there are many stating the property is abandoned, it is not. It is currently vacant, and the owner says he drives down often to visit. Well, that's going to be it for this video. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Comment down below if you like this and want to see more. Maybe throw a suggestion down for your favorite tidbit of grim history. I will see you all in the next one, and as always, have a great day. Bye for now.